Hi, do you suffer from low self-worth, whereby you feel that maybe other people can have things like maybe a good relationship or success in life, that somehow they can achieve things but you can't? If you feel like this, if you feel in some way that you're held back from achieving what you want, from having the fullness of life that you would like, then you're probably suffering from low self-esteem. In this video, we're going to look at some tactics and strategies for dealing with self-esteem and making you feel better right away today. The other day, I put a video out on low self-esteem, and it's kind of a big picture video. And I think it's very relevant because it really talks about why you have low self-esteem and the long-term view for dealing with self-esteem. So I'll put a link in here somewhere, and you can click on it to get the big picture view, which I think is very helpful to not just have self-esteem, but to keep it going in the long term, okay? But in this video, we're going to get cut straight to the chase and look at tactics that you can use today to help boost your self-esteem, okay? So there's three basic tactics. I'm going to mention them, then I'll give some background, and then I'll tell you how to use them, okay? The three basic tactics are to reduce self-criticism that's holding you back, that critical inner voice that's holding you back. The second thing is to use positive suggestion to boost your feeling about yourself. And the third tactic is to use visualization to start thinking about and attracting the things that you want in your life, okay? We could say a fourth one, of course, is activity. You need to go and do activity to change, all right? But these are the basic things. Reduce the inner criticism, boost the self-belief, and also then visualize, all right? Now, how are we going to use these in our daily lives to boost our self-esteem? Well, first of all, we have to realize, why do we have low self-esteem? The main reason we have low self-esteem is that self-esteem is an arbitrary belief system we have about ourselves. Basically, what happens is early during life, the personality is developed in the first 7 or 8 years of life. And we become like an introvert or an extrovert. We become maybe a sort of person like studying or a person like sports. All the sort of personality traits are developed. But another thing that's developed is the inner critic. And the inner critic is a positive and a negative side. The positive side is that it gives you a conscience. The negative side is that it's too critical, okay? So it's created arbitrarily by the interactions with people, usually your parents and your family members, but also your teachers, your neighbors, your siblings, etc. And it basically tells you who you are and what you do and how you fit into life. So this developed in the first 7 or 8 years. Now, if you have low self-esteem, the tendency will mean is that there's too much criticism in the inner critic. It's holding you back too much, all right? In particular, the human being is fashioned in language, okay? I trained, as a young man, I was training in psychoanalysis, and particularly the school I was studying was the Lacanian School of Psychoanalysis. They talk a lot about language. And Lacan, Jacques Lacan, the founder of the Lacanian School, liked to talk about a guy called Saussure. Ferdinand de Saussure. And he had this idea of signifiers and signify, that a word is like, say, a carriage on a train. So the carriage on the train is the word, and each of the people in it are the many metaphorical meanings in the train. So the things we say about ourselves is how we describe ourselves and how we feel about ourselves. And particularly as a child, you're not in a situation to describe your own world. It's described for you. Oh, he's a fun boy. Oh, she's a quiet girl. Oh, he's very naughty. Oh, they're always sad. Oh, they're always this and that. And initially it's external. These external voices are saying this to us. But then slowly but surely it becomes internalized. When it becomes internalized, we start identifying with the image of ourselves, which is actually a false image of who we are. Okay? So early in life, this critic is created, and this is who you buy into. And most of our self-esteem is because of this inner critic being too inner critical, all right? So we have to work on that. Another thing, of course, is we tend to have more confidence where we have more competence, all right? And there's some other concepts we can take a quick look at in the area of self-esteem. So we have things like self-esteem and self-concept, self-esteem and self-confidence, self-esteem and self-compassion. I go into more detail in the other video, but very briefly, the self-concept is your worldview about yourself, okay? So you have a thing called your paradigm. So as well as developing your inner critic in that first 7 or 8 years, you're also developing your world viewpoint about yourself. That's also being developed in that 7 or 8 years. That's called your paradigm. Your paradigm is your belief system. Your paradigm is what you believe you can be, what you believe you can't be, okay? Obviously, if you take 2 kids, one kid is from a billionaire family, they're going to think all sorts of amazing things are possible. Another kid comes from a very poor family, a slum, they're probably going to think that nothing much is possible, okay? So this is where we have the concept of poverty consciousness, okay? So self-consciousness is terribly important because if you, say for example, let's say you're a young person and you are having difficulty romantically with finding partners, okay? Because one of the things you find in self-esteem, yeah, there are some people who have low self-esteem in every aspect of their life, but most people have low self-esteem in one area and high self-esteem in another. So let's say, for example, you might be really good at studies and you have a lot of self-esteem about exams. You can do exams easy, you can get high marks, but you don't know how to talk to people romantically to get a date. Or you can get a date, but you can't get a relationship, or you get a relationship, but you can't get a commitment, or you get a commitment, but you can't get somebody to, maybe live with you or marry you or whatever. And so if you're having a situation whereby you've never had a successful romantic relationship before, well, you don't really have a lot of competence. And because you don't have a lot of competence, you don't really have a lot of confidence. And obviously your self-esteem is going to be low. So same thing if you're starting, say you start in a sales job and you never sold before, because you've never sold before, you probably won't have any confidence in what you're doing. So we have a thing called the catch-22. How do I get the confidence if I've never done it before? And this is one of the aspects that we have to also look for. So part of having low self-esteem can be the case of somebody being too critical, raised from a family that's too critical. But also it could be that you're lacking self-esteem in some aspect of your life that you just don't have a lot of competence in. And because you don't have competence, you don't have confidence. Because you don't have confidence, you have low self-esteem. So sometimes it's a bit of chicken and egg, and we need to go and look at those practical sides. But then this goes back into what I'm saying about these 3 factors, which is reduce criticism, boost ourselves with positive language, and then use visualization, okay? So we can use all these tactics to get around these different variabilities. This is where we get back to self-concept. So you could be having low self-esteem because you're raised into a critical family. But you could also have low self-esteem because you're lacking a self-concept in some aspect of your life, okay? So we have to build a self-concept. So we have this idea of faking before you make it. And there's a lot of truth in this, that if you lack confidence in something, you can dress rehearse it in your mind using visualization and using positive suggestions and so on and so forth. You can actually make it a reality in your mind because your mind does not know the reality versus the fantasy, okay? So this is very important. We have to build a self-concept. Anything you're weak in, if you're weak at sales, you have to start building a concept ahead of the time that I'm good at sales. If you're weak in relationships, no matter what the history is, forget the history, you have to start developing a self-concept that I'm good in relationships. Now, it might be kind of false now, but you have to fake it till you make it. You have to make it, you have to believe it first, and only then it will happen. There has to be an act of faith first. The other one is, again, we'll say self-esteem and self-confidence. People tend to have self-esteem where you have self-confidence, and you'll tend to get self-confidence by getting feedback. So this is one of the very important things. It's not enough if you're talking about boosting your self-esteem to just like read a book or have an affirmation or something. You got to go out there and do things that are going to build self-esteem, okay? So just bear that in mind after I outline these 3 techniques. Now, the last one is self-esteem and self-compassion. And this is very important, that we must really love ourselves and accept ourselves. And this is a very important key to self-esteem, because we're in a world today, thanks to the internet, we got like Instagram and we got YouTube and stuff, that literally there's people out there who are superior to you in every way. It's just a fact. We had a funny thing many years ago, it was always the top competitor wins, etc. And then over the last 30, 40 years, it became populistic to say everybody's a winner and so on, which is nice. But the reality is, no, we're not. The reality is, thanks to the internet, there's people out there, when you have like 1 billion people on YouTube, and probably hundreds of millions of people on Instagram, there's got to be people out there who look better than you, talk better than you, think sharper than you, are better business, better relationships, better everything. And how can you compete? And this is a very important thing. So while I'm giving you a few suggestions in this video to help you with self-esteem, it's also important to be compassionate towards yourself, okay? Yes, you should do better. Yes, you can do better. And yes, you will do better. But try not to compare yourself too much to people on Instagram, people on YouTube. The comparison game is not a good idea. I mean, 20 years ago, you could compare yourself to the guy down the street, the girl in your class. I mean, if you're in a class, there's 25 people in a class, you're just comparing yourself with 25 people. In a school or college, maybe there's 100 people in your year. In a job, a couple of hundred people in your job. In your community, a few hundred people. It's so easy to compare yourself with a few hundred people. Like, let's say you're talking about how handsome you are. You go to a nightclub, there's a couple hundred people. I mean, there's a good chance if you're reasonably young and you go to the gym and you put some makeup on or whatever, that you can look pretty good compared to 100 other people. But how can you compare yourself with 100,000 people or 100 million people? So I'd really, really strongly suggest that if you want to keep your sanity in the self-esteem game, don't start comparing yourself to everybody on the internet, okay? There are simply lots of people out there who look better than you and have so many attributes better than you. So self-compassion, number 1. Okay, so let's get back to these 3 techniques, all right? The first one is reducing the inner criticism. So again, back to this thing of Lacan and Saussure and language, is the idea that words have different meanings. And we actually describe our world according to the words that we use. And so early in life, your world is described to you by your parents and people around you. And it's pretty arbitrary. And a lot of people, it's like this thing, we see a lot of people, they grow up and they want to change their name. Why would you want to change your name? I think a lot of people want to change their name because you feel it's not really them. Okay? Because everything's been described. I mean, even if you look at parents, before you're born, you're on their mind. They're thinking about you before you're born. They're describing you before you're born. They don't know you. You're not born yet. But already they're describing you. And they're comparing you to their family members. So we got to look at the language, because who you are is largely a product of language. So what I suggest for this is that you look at any language that's negative. You need like weeds, you know. Back when I used to live in Ireland, the housing estate I used to live in, everybody had a garden, and in the summer months, everybody's out gardening. We had one neighbour had a quite big garden, about 2 hours a night every night. And the funny thing is, people will, weed every night, 2 hours a night. They'll do like 20 minutes weeding every day. But they don't weed their thoughts. So you got to look at your thoughts, okay? Because your thoughts are a hodgepodge of things your granny said to you, your mom said to you, the person next door, the teacher that said to you when you're a small kid. I mean, are you living the life based upon what a bunch of people said to you when you're a kid? If you are, I would suggest that you stop doing it and get beyond it. So how do we look at it? Look at the language and look at the way the language is structured. So basically look for judgment. So let's say, for example, I can't get a girlfriend or boyfriend, okay? I really suck at relationships, okay? I'm a bad person. If you delve into it and see what's there. So go back to it and take out the judgment. In this case, I really suck at relationships. I can't get a boyfriend or girlfriend. Dump the I'm a bad person, or I'm a useless person, or I'm an ugly person, okay? Dump that and literally write it out and say it to yourself in front of the mirror. I'm actually a good person, okay? So we also have, this is the case of something where you're objectively not good at something. Like, for example, objectively, I don't know how to speak to strangers. I'm very shy. I'm, boring, okay? So we're going to take out the boring. I don't know how to talk to strangers. I'm very shy. All objective truths. I'm not boring. And you say it back to yourself in front of the mirror. I'm shy, okay? So you're starting to change the language, and you keep a note or a diary of this every day and see what language you're using and start pruning your negative thoughts. What about the case of just a feeling whereby you don't actually have an objective thing like, I'm shy, I don't know how to talk to people, I'm boring. Instead, it's just like, I'm ugly, I'm useless, I'm stupid. But you don't have a reason behind it. Well, what you can do in that case is you're not going to take the judgment out. What you're going to do in that case is you're going to write it down and say it back to yourself. I accept that right now I feel that I'm ugly. Or I accept that right now I feel that I'm useless. Or I accept that right now I feel that I am pathetic. I accept that I feel this way. I also realize that this is simply an impression, that this is not factual. It's just how I think about myself right now, and I'm working to improve how I think about myself every day. So again, I accept the way I feel. I realize that this is not reality. It's just a judgment against myself. And I'm working every day to improve the situation. Now you might be thinking, hey Dermot, this is very silly. What's all this about, okay? The point is, it's the pruning the negative thoughts, which can be a negative thought with an actual judgment, in which case you got to remove the judgment. Or in this other case, that there's like an actual objective thing you're not good at, okay? And the second type is simply, so it's a judgment with a founding, a reality. Things like, I can't maintain relationships. I must be an awful person, okay? The truth is, I can't maintain relationships. I'm not an awful person. I just can't maintain relationships. So that is, there's a factual judgment that your relationships all go up in flames after a few months, but you dump the judgment. But the other one is, it's not even like that. It's just, I'm shitty, I'm awful, I'm ugly, I'm fat, even though, the doctor says you're slim or whatever it is, all right? So that's the one without the judgment, in which case it's I accept. So I hope you can see that if it's a genuine thing, like I can't maintain a relationship, I don't want to talk to strangers, if the judgment is objective, you're right. You're right about your assessment, but you're judging, so just dump the judgment. If there's no objective anything, you just don't like yourself, and you can't say why. Now I have other videos about the inner critic and so on. You can take a look in them, and they go into more detail about this area of loving yourself and disliking yourself. But I feel these two are very important to reduce, if you've got a genuine judgment, a genuine observation is accurate, but as a judgment, dump the judgment. And if it's the case that you just really don't like yourself, say this thing, I accept that this is the way I feel. I also accept that this is not reality. It's just how I feel right now, and I'm working on improving. You might be saying, Dermot, why do this? Why bother doing this? And the reason to bother doing this is we got to prune these thoughts, because you're describing your world every day. It's like a monitor, okay? I don't know if this works today with LED monitors now, but your traditional TV, you take a picture on an old analog TV, you see the frames freezing, because it's actually refreshing like this, okay? Believe it or not, you're refreshing too. You're refreshing your view of yourself every few seconds. Keep refreshing yourself. So we need to prune ourselves, okay? Take a notebook, get in the habit of writing stuff down. Journaling, great idea. Start journaling. Talk about how you feel about yourself. Start writing your life story about how I came to be. Start getting all the stuff out in paper. Another video I did recently about handling trauma talks about this idea of journaling and so on, okay? So that's the first thing you need to do to boost your self-esteem. Start weeding out the negative thoughts. The second thing is using suggestion. So things like I'm getting better and better every day. Every day I'm finding it easier to talk to people. Every day my relationships are improving every day. Every day I'm becoming more and more expressive in my relationships, and I'm handling much better every day. So the key with positive self-suggestion is you take the thing you want to improve and you do it in the now. So it's not like I will be getting better next week. It's like I'm getting better every day. Every day in every way I'm getting better and better. I'm getting better and better and better in my relationships. I'm becoming more and more attractive to potential sexual partners. I know exactly how to talk to them. Okay? So you're using this. The idea is you create a phrase and you start using it on a repetitive basis. Now, there's a little clarification before we go on with this. This idea, the power of positive thinking, was very popular some years ago. And more recently, you might have heard of the law of attraction, the secret movie. It's kind of usurped it. And the reason why it's usurped it is that there was this focus maybe 20, 30 years ago on positive thinking, fake it till you make it. It works to a degree, but you've also got a thing called your paradigm. Your paradigm is your belief system, your worldview. So to some degree, you can fake it till you make it by using phrases and stuff. But it can't just be thinking. So what we have to understand is how the subconscious mind works. Subconscious mind, so like the person watching this is your conscious self. But you got a subconscious self as a part that drives the car, that brushes the teeth. It's all your subconscious mind that keeps your heart and lungs running when you're sleeping and so on. So the thing with the subconscious mind is that it is not rational. We tend to think everything is rational, but the subconscious mind is not rational, okay? The subconscious mind is visual. It runs on visual images and it runs on feelings, okay? So using positive suggestion is very good. So again, this idea, we prune the negative thoughts, we put positive thoughts in to fill in the gaps, okay? It's a bit like you go to the dentist and the dentist, he drills away at all the rot and he puts filling in. Same thing. You're drilling away the rot of the tooth, negative thoughts, and then you're putting positive thoughts in. But it can't just be thoughts. You see, if you think positively, but you believe negatively, belief will win. It's like which is more powerful, an iron will or imagination? Imagination is always more powerful than the will. So the subconscious mind, we got to use the imagination in our favor, okay? So when I say use positive suggestions, this brings in the third thing, visualization. We got to visualize it as well, okay? So it's like they say this thing that when you talk to your dog, it hears the first few words and the last few words, but doesn't get everything else. The subconscious mind is like that. It's not a rational mind. So you can't just say, I'm really good at relationships. You have to visualize yourself. Visualize yourself walking into that bar or into that college cafeteria or something. Visualize yourself being confident with the potential romantic partners. Visualize yourself having nice, interesting conversations and being impressive. You want to get sales, visualize yourself being successful at sales. Visualize yourself being, sitting an exam and being like, knowing all the answers. Visualize, see it. So you're going to create these phrases, but also you should create powerful visualizations. And the visualization should have feelings attached as well, okay? This is where you get to a thing called the law of attraction. If you haven't heard of the law of attraction, it sounds very salubrious, but the basic idea of the law of attraction is whatever you think and feel about a lot happens, okay? So let's say the ideal example is, say, like in school, the school bully. A person is being bullied by somebody. And they keep thinking about this person, they keep visualizing this person. Well, guess what? Your subconscious mind says, oh, you keep sending me images of this person, you have a lot of feelings, terror of this person. I'll make sure you're terrified. I mean, you're going to make this person all the time. If you're in a situation you don't like in life and you want to change it, don't run away from it. Run to the situation that you do want. Don't run away from the situation you don't want. Say you can't get a job. Don't think I can't get a job. Just focus on getting the job. Say you had problems with relationships in the past. Don't think about the past. Focus on the future, okay? So you got to visualize what you want to achieve in life, okay? So it's a bit like the headache. You never have, exactly now, the headache is going right now. When you forget about the headache just, where did the headache go? It just disappeared. So don't focus on the problem, focus on the solution. Don't focus on I don't know how to talk to members of the opposite sex, or I don't know how to sell something, or I can't study, or I don't know how to talk to strangers. Don't focus on these things. Focus on, I get really good at talking with strangers. I really want to meet new people every day. I really think I'm very interesting, and I think people will like me romantically. Start focusing on the solution, okay? So those 3 steps. Number 1, you got to reduce the inner critical thoughts. So a bit of journaling, take out a notebook. Every day, just look at your language and think, what are you thinking about myself? And pick out a few lines there, and then change. When you see, catch yourself, have a notebook with you. When you catch yourself being, oh no, won't work for me. This will never work for me. Well, then take out a notebook, write it down. This will never work out for me. What is that all about? Why won't it work for me? Is it objective? Is it subjective? Is it like, this won't work for me because I physically can't do it? Okay. Or is it purely subjective? I just don't think I could do it. So again, I give a romantic example. You meet somebody very beautiful, exciting. I think, I'm out of my league. They're way up there. They'll never talk to me. Is that objectively true? Or is that just, in which case you might say, okay, I am out of my league. That's okay. All right. See what I mean? So you can look at it and see, is it objective? And I just take out the judgment. So rather than, she's out of my league or he's out of my league or whatever, I won't even talk to them. And instead, it might be because I'm a shitty person. Well, no, I accept that I feel that I'm a shitty person. I don't know if they're out of my league because I'm talking to them. Maybe they think I'm really good. Okay? So look at that thought, that critical thought. Is there an objective thing? Okay? They're out of my league. I'm very shy and quiet, not good looking. I could never woo that person. I accept that. But that doesn't mean I shouldn't try. Or is it just definitely whatever? So the point is, reduce the critical thoughts. Start putting in positive thoughts, but also positive visual images. Start visualizing the life that you want. Start looking at TV programs, YouTube videos, reading books about things that inspire you. Okay? So the fact that you lack self-esteem means, in one way, it's a wonderful thing. You are aware of some of your flaws, but you can work on it. And you can have, a better life than you have now. Maybe you're going to accept your certain limitations, but also you can work at saying, well, what can I get? What kind of job can I get? What kind of relationships can I get? And just weeding through those negative thoughts, working on those positive suggestions, and working on those positive visualizations, which have feelings and images attached. It shouldn't be a fantasy, okay? But it shouldn't be giving up. You got 2 extremes. One extreme is I just fold, I'll never get the job I want, I'll never have the lifestyle I want. And the other is, trying to live some crazy lifestyle that maybe it's not viable, considering whatever personality traits, etc. I have. The point of self-esteem is that some of it's useful as feedback. But the key thing with self-esteem is looking at those observations and working on removing some things, improving some things, and striving for some things so we can be a better version of ourselves, so we can achieve more in life and be happier and more fulfilled in life. Okay? And finally, some of those aspects, things like the self-concept, is building a bigger self-concept and building confidence over time. And this is one of the things that happens maturationally as people grow older anyway. Usually they have more experience, with that comes confidence and more self-acceptance of who they are. But you don't have to wait 20 or 30 years for that to happen. It's something you can work on today. So you can look at what kind of person you are, and you can look at becoming a bigger version of yourself. You can develop your self-concept better. and particularly through language, because who you are is very much housed in language. It's true for everybody. Change your language, change your inner description, and you change the person. While, of course, reality checking and not going off the deep end and having all sorts of egotistical fantasies about yourself, and not changing yourself silly fantasies about yourself, but quite possibly who you describe yourself as being based upon how you're raised is probably not who you really are. Okay? So work on these three things: reducing inner critic, boosting positive suggestion, and the power of visualization, and see over time what you can really do with your self-esteem.